Have you ever wondered how a normal evening can vanish in seconds? How the warmth of home, familiar voices, and the rhythm of everyday life can collapse behind one door in a single night. On July 6, 2024, just after midnight, police cars lined Riverside Lane in Darlington. Blue lights flickered across wet pavement as crime scene specialists stepped into the home of the Orrin family. Inside, the hallway smelled of metal and disinfectant. Officers moved quietly, photographing the kitchen, gathering utensils, clothes, and a phone into evidence bags. Outside, neighbors watched in silence, unsure how laughter from the previous night had turned into a nightmare. What everyone knew, even before the full story was clear, was this: a 14-year-old girl was dead. On the front steps sat Lena Orrin, wrapped in a blanket, staring blankly ahead. A few feet away, her husband Mark Orrin stood handcuffed, eyes downcast as officers guided him to a patrol car. No one spoke. Nothing made sense yet. A few hours earlier, their home had been peaceful. Mark came back from work, turned on the Euro 2024 match, drank most of a bottle of red wine, and smoked a hand-rolled joint. In the kitchen, Elena cooked dinner, macaroni, meat sauce, the usual quiet evening routine. Their daughter Lena, upstairs watching TikTok, eventually came down, bored, and began joking around with her mother as they cooked. Their laughter grew louder, and Mark, already dulled and irritated, called out for quiet. They ignored him. Elena, still joking, tapped his arm with a pair of tongs. Instead of laughing, he snapped. Lena teased him, saying he took everything too seriously. That was enough to push him over the edge. Frustrated and intoxicated, Mark turned toward the counter, expecting to pick up the tongs. Instead, he grabbed a kitchen knife. Without thinking, he swung his arm. The knife slipped, entered Lena's chest, and dropped to the floor. The blade pierced her lung and grazed her heart. She collapsed instantly. Elena screamed for help, pressing a towel to the wound as Mark froze, unable to comprehend what he'd done. Medics arrived within minutes, but the injury was unsurvivable. At 11:50 p.m., the doctor declared Lena dead. The kitchen that had echoed with laughter minutes earlier was now the site of her final breath. Police sealed the home. Investigators noted the absence of struggle, no overturned furniture, nothing broken, only blood on the tiles. Elena sat in shock, answering questions in whispers. Mark, intoxicated, insisted it was an accident. His story shifted constantly. First he meant to throw tongs, then he said the knife slipped. Officers smelled alcohol on him and found the knife near the refrigerator. Everything was documented. At the station, Mark's blood tests showed 0.14% alcohol and traces of THC. During interrogation, his explanations contradicted forensic findings. A medical expert confirmed the wound's downward angle made an accidental slip nearly impossible. When pressed, Mark repeated, "I didn't mean it," but couldn't explain how the knife struck so deeply if it simply slipped from his hand. Later, investigators uncovered Mark's past, a 1993 conviction for slashing a man with a Stanley knife during a bar fight. Though decades old, the pattern, impulsive violence under the influence, shifted the investigation's direction. Psychologists described Mark as generally calm but prone to sudden loss of control when intoxicated. Forensic analysis of the kitchen knife showed no signs of a random deflection. The blade was thrust at a 40-degree angle with controlled force from less than 5 feet away. A 3D reconstruction placed Mark directly in front of Lena at the moment of impact. The autopsy confirmed a stab-slash motion, not a dropped object. No defensive wounds were found. She hadn't expected harm. With this, the case was reclassified from a tragic accident to intentional homicide without premeditation. Elena, meanwhile, clung fiercely to denial. Her earliest statements insisted Mark couldn't have intended harm. She refused to read forensic reports, calling everything a mistake. But as days passed, reality tightened around her. Losing her daughter and watching her husband's downfall shattered the life she knew. She became isolated in town, judged, whispered about, avoided. The trial began in January 2025. Prosecutors argued Mark knowingly held a knife and delivered a deliberate motion, backed by forensic evidence, intoxication, and his prior conviction. The defense claimed it was a drunken mistake, a moment of confusion, not malice. They emphasized Mark's remorse and lack of history harming Lena. Expert witnesses disagreed. The medical examiner stated the wound could not have come from an accidental toss. Elena's testimony was emotional. She defended her husband's character but couldn't explain how the knife pierced with such force. Mark himself broke down on the stand, saying he loved his daughter and would give anything to take that second back. But he failed to clarify how he confused a knife for tongs. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. On January 31, 2025, they returned with a verdict, guilty of murdering his daughter. Mark was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 15 years. The judge called Lena's death the outcome of reckless, destructive behavior by a man who lost control. Elena wept silently. She later left Darlington, moving in with her sister, taking with her only a few of Lena's belongings. Mark was transferred to Leeds prison, placed under psychological monitoring in a solitary cell. The house on Riverside Lane remained empty long after the trial. Windows shut, toys left at the gate fading under the weather, flowers wilting. A quiet reminder of a night when laughter turned into irreversible loss.